think Democrats are reportedly not donating to the Democratic Party. Is that what you're hearing? Is that what you're seeing?
This happens every loss. The donor class or a little portion of the donor class feels demoralized, unheard. They go to the press. They air their complaints. They think they know what the best strategy is for the party. Sometimes it's correct, sometimes it's not. They have these summits. This is all very normal, part of the course, except I think in this situation with some of the tech donors, whether it's Jeff Skoll or Reid Hoffman, who have close relationships with Elon Musk, there's frustration, I think, from other Democrats about how they're cozying up to Elon Musk and maybe playing both sides. That's not unusual in politics. I think it's happened since we've basically taken on big donations for both parties. Okay. With that being said, I think there's a great opportunity for Democrats. We're not saying there's one message for every single community in this country, but I do think there's an opportunity for our opposition leader, Hakeem Jeffries, whether he's feeling it in his bones or not, he is the opposition leader. I think there's a great opportunity for him to go out there with leaders all over the country and go to communities and talk about how Donald Trump's first 100 days has annihilated jobs in that community, really explaining the policies a little bit more. And I don't feel like that's what's happening. And maybe that's what will make some of these donors feel a little bit better.
Well, I was going to ask you if Democratic donors are feeling the pressure to back the Trump administration or face backlash, because that is a line that we have heard. Is that what you're hearing?
That's not necessarily what I'm hearing. I do think that there's always a group of donors that play both sides. I don't think that any of these donors should be scared. They're fine. They'll be fine for the rest of time, and their families will be fine for the rest of time. I think some of them are maybe a little disconnected from what's happening on the ground with working people. But with that being said, there's just the reality of politics in which small donors are not giving as much, partly because of the economy and part of it just because the ecosystem for raising small dollar donations has changed. And so the Democrats are relying on it. But there's a great opportunity. We have a new Democratic Party National Committee chair, Ken Martin, who is much more in line with working people. And I think the more Democrats lean into what their strategy is and really embodying it and talking to voters, more donors are going to feel comfortable giving to the party. So it goes hand in hand. You have to have the leadership embodied. You have to be talking to working people, getting your message out, and then the donors will feel better about that so that they feel as if they're not losing whatever amount of money they're giving to the party, and it's a lost cause.
You mentioned House Minority Leader Jeffries. Is he right in calling out the Trump administration for breaking their promise to voters on lowering prices? I mean, we were talking about egg prices all day yesterday, and a lot of people are frustrated.
Absolutely. I think he needs to say this more. He needs to have every single messenger, Democratic messenger, go into their communities and talk about this. He needs to find surrogates. He needs to work with the DNC. This is what we should be talking about all day long. I just read an article right before coming on about how in the Bronx right now in New York, you have bodegas, little delis, selling, 3 eggs at a time. They call them Lucy's because people can't afford a dozen eggs or say half a dozen eggs. They have to sell them individually. That's not great. It's a symbol. It used to be the price of milk. Now it's the price of eggs. And there's so much more. We haven't felt the repercussions of Donald Trump and Elon Musk's actions yet. I don't believe that voters vote based on bureaucracy. I think they vote on whether or not they feel like they can afford the cost of eggs. And that is the message that Democrats should be talking about everywhere, all at once, all the time.
I also want to take you to some live pictures. We are watching the Kentucky governor, Andy Beshear, talking about the flash floods that they are dealing with and the plan of action that Kentucky is taking right now. And as we take a look and we keep our camera on him for the moment, I'm just wondering, do you think that Beshear could be a potential Democratic candidate for the president in 2028?
Absolutely. I think we have a bench, next generation leadership who is rising to the occasion right now. And it's not going to be perfect, right? The geriatric aspect of our party has definitely held on and maybe hasn't nurtured the next generation as much, but there's a real opportunity for people like Governor Beshear, who knows how to speak to working people, as a Democrat, who does not abandon progressive working class values, but has been able to win in a fairly conservative state. I think there are a lot of Democrats out there who are willing and able to lean into that message of working people. So yes, I think he's definitely one of our future leaders, and there's plenty more. There's dozens of others.
Right, and I was just going to ask you about Bashir. I mean, what can people learn from him? You just mentioned some of his attributes. What do you think is a good takeaway for the Dems?
I think the takeaway is we need to lead with economics. It doesn't mean that intersectionality cannot be focused on. I mean, we do have to talk about identities because the Donald Trump administration right now is ripping away at every single identity possible and using that as his blunt force against Democrats. But we can't stray away from economics as well. And intersectionality is, I think, the secret sauce to winning these elections. And he's been, even though he comes from a well-known family in Kentucky, he's been really capable at getting down on the ground and speaking to everyday people's needs. And that's always been the secret sauce of politics. There's no new formula. It's always about talking to working people and those bread and butter dinner table issues that matter to every home.
Right. All right. Something that we will be watching for sure. National co-chair on Obama's re-election campaign, Nomiki Konst. Thank you so much for joining us very much. We're also